If there's one team that didn't expect the offseason to go the way it did for them, that has to be Ferrari. The Maranello-based team has faced some serious problems as they're heading into the 2023 season, both with their rivals and within the team. On top of that, the pressure on Vasseur to perform well straight out of the bat is something that the Frenchman will have to tackle as early as the first race, and we saw how Ferrari performed under pressure in 2023. A lot of bad things are happening inside of Ferrari right now, so let's just go one by one and start with the most serious one, the sponsor loss. The Italian team has lost two of its main sponsors, which are Snapdragon and Velas. The latter one seemed to be a bit more painful because it wasn't as mutual as one would think, with both sides having different approaches to who's to blame for what happened. According to Velas, the digital cryptocurrency, Ferrari was to be blamed because they did not comply with clauses that would have permitted Velas to create NFT images. On the other hand, Ferrari said that Velas was in financial breach and they couldn't continue with a sponsor like that. Legal action is being contemplated by both parties, but the fact that Snapdragon has given up on Ferrari as well points out a different movement that is currently happening in the Maranello team. For example, Snapdragon, the company that produces chip semiconductors, was ranked as a premium sponsor for Ferrari, just like Velas. However, they couldn't find a common language with the Maranello team, and it's reported that Ferrari would lose $30 million from Snapdragon and $25 million from Velas. This leaves the team with a $55 million hole to fill in less than a month. And while Ferrari is a team that can easily attract sponsors, the current winds blowing in the Italian team may be a bit throwing off for the investors. Losing sponsors is an everyday situation in Formula One, and we've seen that even Red Bull is going to part ways with 3 sponsors, while Mercedes is parting ways with FTX. However, replacing them will be much easier said than done, which is why Ferrari needs to be more serious about their approach. The second reason why Ferrari is in a bad position is the ban that they've received from the FIA for the engine manufacturers meeting regarding the 2026 regulations. As of now, there are 5 F1 engine manufacturers that have signed the 2026 regulations: Honda, Alpine, Mercedes, Audi, and RBPT, or Red Bull Powertrains. Ferrari was the team to miss the signing, but they did it on purpose, as they do not like the way that the FIA is treating Red Bull. Currently, the Austrian team is borrowing the intellectual property from Honda, and they will enter the 2026 season with their own independent powertrain division, something that would boost the team's performance very much. On the other hand, Ferrari doesn't believe that the FIA should treat RBPT like rookies, just like they'll treat Audi, mostly because Red Bull would have gathered massive experience until that point, and to treat them like rookies is just a blatant and bizarre mistake. As a protest note, they didn't formally announce their intention to be part of the 2026 rule cycle. A deadline of October 15th was given to every power unit supplier to sign the contract, and that's why Ferrari was banned from the first meeting that was held in December. While this may not mean very much for them, as they'll likely receive the invitation later on this year, it's something that points out some serious issues happening inside of the team, and Ferrari, for one, isn't really doing much to solve them. And yes, do not forget the new team principal. While the majority of Ferrari fans are relieved that Binotto has been replaced by Frédéric Vasseur, the reality is quite different. The former Alfa Romeo team principal will have a very difficult role to play in leading Ferrari to their first championship from 2007 onwards, mostly because he doesn't have time to waste. Obviously, the team has shown that they can win races in 2022, and the most obvious issue was the tactics and the strategic blunders, something that Ferrari hopes will be a thing of the past with the new team principal. On the other hand, this mounts a huge pressure on Vasseur to perform straight away, and when put under pressure, things could either bend or break. It's very likely that things will break in Ferrari, given the fact that Vasseur wants to implement a tactic that will make Carlos Sainz one very angry F1 driver. According to the Frenchman, every successful team in the past has had a number 1 driver, the preferred one, and a number 2 driver. In 2022, it was evident that Leclerc was the better driver, but most of the time he and Sainz were allowed to race fair and square. This is a sight we won't likely see in 2023, and given that Leclerc was one of the main catalysts for change and how close he and his manager are with Vasseur, it's already clear who will be Ferrari's preferred driver. That is, of course, if Sainz doesn't manage to pull something from his pocket and show that he can beat Leclerc just like he did in 2021 in his first season with the Maranello team. Ferrari has been left in a position that not many teams would want to be in, with Binotto leaving the team and being able to join any of the team's rivals in the following periods. There have been reports that Binotto has been offered thick compensation by Ferrari in order for him to not accept any role in the rival teams, and we are not sure whether he has accepted some of them or he has decided to move on with his managing career. It's evident that Ferrari treated Binotto with zero respect, and the fact that he brought the team exactly where it needed to be in 2022 and still got fired after just one season of being competitive says enough about the board of directors in Italy. That is why Vasseur is going to be put under immense pressure, and it seems like the first mistake that he'll make will spark talks about him not being competitive or good enough to lead Ferrari into a championship. What's even more interesting is the fact that Vasseur doesn't really have experience when it comes to leading championship-caliber teams, as the ones that he's managed until now have battled in the midfield, Renault and Alfa Romeo. And Vasseur really went from managing Alfa Romeo with Bottas and the rookie Zhou to managing Leclerc and Sainz and having one shot to win the championship in 2023. While the light at the end of the tunnel is a bit brighter than one would originally think, with Ferrari already having made massive improvements to their engine, there is still a lot that needs to be fixed within the Italian team. And the fact that Red Bull's special advisor Helmut Marko has thrown cheap shots at Ferrari, saying that Red Bull should be feared more by Mercedes than Ferrari, just goes to show that the Italian team isn't being understood professionally and properly for the coming season. It could be that the mistakes that have happened in 2022 have taken their toll on the Maranello team, and now everybody perceives them as a team that will likely lose yet another season, and Leclerc is not ready for his first championship. But history has shown that teams that are seen as underdogs often go on to win the championship just because they have something to prove to the world. In an era dominated by Verstappen and Red Bull, and in an era where the Austrian team hasn't had a proper competition since 2022, Ferrari needs to be very careful on how they execute things after the third race of the season. And with how Mercedes has been making progress in the second half of 2022, along with the updates for the W14, which is the 2023 version of their car, the Maranello team has a lot to be worried about. The pressure that will be mounted on their heads is immense, and that is why many think that Vasseur isn't the proper fix for all of the issues that have happened inside of Ferrari. It's true that the root of the problems was the management problem, along with the reliability of the engine, with the latter one being fixed by Binotto, but the first one is something that isn't likely to change if you swap one man for another. With that being said, it's going to be a very interesting period ahead of Ferrari, as the Italian team is going to strike again for greatness in the next season. The odds are stacked against them, with Red Bull dominating the sport and Mercedes unlikely to have 2 consecutive bad seasons, but if there is one team that can prove everyone wrong, it is Ferrari. What do you think about the Italian team? Let us know in the comments below.